She's laughing at your jokes, answering all your questions, and it seems like she's into it. But later, when you text her, she ghosts you. What happened? The truth is, you had a nice conversation, and nice is the kiss of death. The reason so many conversations fizzle out is because nice doesn't create attraction, it creates comfort and predictability. What I'm about to show you is how to turn a dull, forgettable interaction into something she keeps thinking about days later. The best part is, you'll do it by talking less, not more. After studying hundreds of real interactions over 2 years, I discovered that the difference between a conversation that sparks chemistry and one that dies quietly often comes down to a single moment. One most people don't even notice. Once you recognize it, you'll never miss it again. I once saw a guy named Marcus use this technique at a wedding, and what happened still amazes me. But before I tell you that story, here's what you need to understand. Most conversations die in the first 3 minutes. It's not because you're boring or because she's uninterested. It's because of a subtle habit that feels completely normal. You start relating too soon. When she shares something about herself, where she's from, what she does, or something she enjoys, your instinct is to connect. You want to be supportive, agreeable, and kind. You say things like, "That's awesome," or "I love that too," thinking you're building rapport. But what you're really doing is giving away your approval before she's done anything to earn it. It sounds harmless, but here's the problem. If she already has your approval, there's nothing left for her to win. If she doesn't need to impress you, she won't try. And once that dynamic sets in, the energy fades, the spark dies, and you're left wondering why she disappeared. This pattern repeats itself in conversation after conversation until you learn how to break it. She says something, and you validate it. She says something else, and you validate that too. The whole time, you think you're building connection, but what you're really doing is eliminating tension. You're making everything too easy, too predictable, too safe. And here's where it gets interesting. There's a reason you do this, and it's not your fault. You've been trained your whole life to be agreeable, to make people comfortable, to show interest by affirming what they say. In most social situations, that works perfectly fine, but when it comes to creating attraction with a woman, it kills it, because attraction doesn't live in agreement. It lives in tension, in uncertainty, in those moments where she's not quite sure if she's impressed you yet or not. The first step to making any conversation flirty is simple, but it goes against every instinct you have. Stop giving away your approval for free. Make her work for it, not in a mean or dismissive way, but by creating just enough uncertainty that she actually has to win you over instead of the other way around. Here's how that looks in real time. She tells you she's from Chicago. Instead of saying, "Oh, cool, I love Chicago," you say, "Chicago, huh? Are you one of those people who thinks deep dish is real pizza?" Notice what just happened. You didn't validate her, you didn't agree, you challenged her playfully. Now she has to defend herself, to qualify, to engage. She's no longer coasting through small talk. She's invested, or maybe she tells you what she does for work. Instead of replying, "That's really interesting," you say, "Let me guess, you're the one in the office who always has to fix everyone else's mess." Again, you're teasing, making a light assumption. She'll either laugh and correct you or play along. But either way, she's showing you more of who she really is. That's exactly what Marcus did at the wedding I mentioned earlier. He was talking to a bridesmaid who told him she was a teacher. Instead of saying, "Oh, that's great, I love teachers," he asked, "Elementary or high school? Because you've got that elementary teacher energy." She laughed, said high school, and immediately started defending why she didn't have elementary teacher energy. In that moment, she was chasing. With one playful sentence, he flipped the frame. The conversation shifted from her answering his questions to her trying to prove something to him, and that shift changes everything. Once she's investing, she's not just being polite anymore, she's actually engaged. That's when flirting starts to happen naturally. But here's where most guys go wrong. They hear "make her work for it" and think it means acting like a jerk, being cold, arrogant, or overly detached. They overcorrect. And that only makes them look insecure, like they're trying too hard to seem unimpressed. The key isn't to be mean, it's to be playful. You're not tearing her down, you're just not building her up for no reason. You're creating a spark, a little friction, a light challenge, and doing it all with a smile. The vibe you're giving off is "I'm teasing you because I'm confident and comfortable enough to do it." Think about it like this. Real attraction doesn't come from agreement, it comes from energy, contrast, and curiosity. And when you stop trying to impress her, that's when she starts wanting to impress you. When you meet someone who immediately loves everything about you, what happens? You don't really respect their opinion because they didn't have any standards. They just liked you by default. But when someone makes you work a little, when they challenge you, tease you, or make you qualify yourself, their approval actually means something. That's exactly what you're doing here. Making your approval mean something by not giving it away so easily. And that's step one. Don't validate her too fast. Create a little push and pull. Make her earn your interest instead of handing it to her on a silver plate. But here's the catch. That alone isn't enough. If all you do is tease and challenge her without ever pulling her back in, you'll start to come across as combative, like you're trying to one-up her the entire time. That's where step two comes in. And this is the point where most guys drop the ball. You're a few minutes into the conversation now. You've been playful, you've challenged her a bit, she's laughing, she's engaged. Great. But then you hit a wall. Because you can only tease someone for so long before it starts to feel like empty banter with no real substance. And when she senses that the conversation has no depth, she checks out fast. This is the moment when most guys panic. They feel the energy dip, so they start scrambling, asking more questions, telling stories, or trying to impress her with something cool about themselves. Ironically, all of that just drags the conversation back to boring, predictable territory. What they don't realize is that the drop in energy isn't about needing more content. It's about needing more connection. Real connection. Not the fake "we both like the same Netflix show" kind of connection, but the kind that makes her feel like you actually see her. Most guys think connection means asking deep questions like "what's your passion?" or "what are you looking for in life?" But that's not connection, that's an interview. It feels heavy and forced. Real connection happens when you notice something about her that she didn't explicitly tell you. When you pick up on a vibe, a pattern, an energy, and call it out. Not in a creepy way, but in a way that makes her think, wait, how did he notice that? For example, you've been talking to this girl for a few minutes. She's laughing, playing along with your teasing, but you notice that every time you challenge her, she doubles down. She defends herself. She doesn't back down. Instead of changing the subject, you pause and say, "You know what? You've got that competitive streak. I can tell you hate losing at anything." Now watch what happens. She'll either agree and tell you a story that proves it, or she'll laugh and try to deny it while secretly proving your point. Either way, she feels seen. And that feeling, that moment of recognition, is what sparks real attraction. You just showed her that you're not going through the motions, you're actually paying attention. That's the difference between flirting and small talk. Small talk is surface level, it's transactional. You say something, she responds, and the cycle repeats. Flirting is observation. It's about noticing the subtle things, the way she reacts, the way she moves, the way she holds eye contact, and reflecting them back in a playful, accurate way. I learned this from a guy I used to work with named James. He wasn't especially good-looking, rich, or even that funny, but women were drawn to him. I couldn't figure out why until I started listening to how he talked to them. He'd spend the first few minutes being light and playful. Then, out of nowhere, he'd drop a perfectly timed observation about who they were. Every single time, the girl would stop, look at him differently, and lean in. I saw him do this once at a bar with a woman who clearly wasn't interested at first. Short answers, checking her phone. The classic signs of politeness without attraction. But James didn't push harder. He didn't try to entertain her more. He just watched. After a couple of minutes, he said, "You're one of those people who says yes to everything, then regrets it later, aren't you?" She stopped, looked at him, and laughed. Not a polite laugh, but a real one. Then she said, "How did you know that?" And just like that, the entire energy shifted. She put her phone down, leaned in, and for the next 20 minutes she was completely locked in. Because he made her feel like he got her, like he saw something in her that most people missed. That's the power of observation. It cuts through all the surface-level stuff and creates a moment of real connection. And here's the crazy part, you don't even have to be right. You just have to be confident enough to make the call. Because even if you're wrong, the fact that you were bold enough to say it out loud makes you interesting. It shows you're not afraid to take a risk, and women respect that far more than they respect playing it safe. So step 2 is this. Make an observation about who she is, not just what she's saying. Pay attention to how she talks, how she reacts, what she emphasizes, and what she avoids. Then, call it out in a way that feels playful but real. Say something like, "You strike me as someone who plans everything," or "I bet you're the friend everyone calls when they need advice," or even, "You've got that energy like you're always 3 steps ahead of everyone else." The key is to make it specific enough that it feels personal, but broad enough that you're not guessing wildly. And when you land it, when she feels like you've actually noticed something real about her, the conversation stops being small talk and becomes something she'll remember. But that's where most guys stop. They master the teasing, they throw in a sharp observation, and they think that's enough. So they start cycling between those two things, tease a little, observe a little, repeat, and while that's miles better than interview mode, it still misses the final piece, the part that makes a conversation flirty instead of just interesting. Because here's the truth. You can be playful, you can be observant, but if you never create tension, if you never make her wonder what you're actually thinking, the conversation stays friendly. And friendly doesn't lead anywhere. Friendly gets you a nice talking to you and a handshake goodbye. So what's the difference between a conversation that's interesting and one that's truly flirty? It's this. Flirty conversations have stakes. There's something on the line. There's an energy in the air that something could happen, that this isn't just 2 people passing time. It's 2 people testing each other to see if there's something real there. And that feeling doesn't come from what you say. It comes from what you don't say. It lives in the pauses, the looks, the moments where you let silence hang just a little longer than feels comfortable. Those are the moments where you're not rushing to fill the space or make her feel at ease. Most guys are terrified of silence, so the second there's a lull, they jump in with another question, another joke, another story, and every time they do that, they kill the tension, because tension lives in the gaps. It's in those moments where she's not sure what you're thinking or what's coming next, where she has to sit with the uncertainty instead of being rescued from it. Think about the last time you felt real chemistry with someone. I guarantee there were moments where neither of you were talking, where you were just looking at each other and it felt charged, like something was about to happen. That's tension, and you can't create it if you're constantly filling every second with words. So, here's step 3. The one that separates guys who have nice conversations from guys who create actual attraction. Let the silence breathe. Don't be afraid of the pause. When you make an observation or say something playful, don't immediately follow it up with another line. Let it land, let her sit with it. Let the moment stretch just long enough that it feels like something. Here's what that looks like. You've been talking for a while. You tease her about something, she laughs, and instead of jumping straight into your next line, you just look at her. Hold eye contact a beat longer than normal. Smile slightly, then say nothing. Let her feel that pause. 9 times out of 10, she'll be the one to fill it. She'll say something, she'll laugh nervously, she'll ask you a question, and when she does, you've shifted the power dynamic again, because now she's the one working to keep the conversation going. She's the one feeling the need to fill the space. And that's when things start to get flirty. I saw this play out perfectly at a house party last year. There was a guy talking to a girl by the kitchen. He said something that made her laugh. Then he just stopped. He didn't say another word, just looked at her with this slight smirk. You could see her processing it. She tucked her hair behind her ear, looked down, then looked back up at him and said, "What?" with a smile on her face. He just shrugged and said, "Nothing. You're just fun to mess with." That 5-second pause did more for that interaction than anything he could have said, because it created uncertainty. She didn't know what he was thinking. She didn't know if he was into her or just playing around. And that uncertainty made her want to figure it out. It made her invest more. It made her chase. But here's the mistake most guys make when they try this. They think letting the silence breathe means going completely quiet and cold. So they overdo it. They pause for way too long, break eye contact, and stare off into space. They make it awkward instead of charged. The pause only works if you're still present, if you're still engaged, holding eye contact, smiling slightly, giving off the vibe that you're comfortable in the silence. Because the silence isn't about ignoring her, it's about letting the tension sit instead of dissolving it immediately. Think about it like this. When you watch a really good movie, the best scenes aren't the ones where the characters are talking non-stop. They're the moments where nothing's being said but everything's being communicated. The look between two characters, the pause before someone makes a decision, that's where the emotion lives. And that's exactly what you're creating here, a moment where the vibe says more than the words ever could. So you tease her, you make an observation, and then you let it breathe. You don't rush to the next thing, you don't over-explain, you just let the moment exist. And in that gap, that subtle charged silence, that's where she starts to feel something. That's where the conversation stops being friendly and starts feeling like something more. But here's what ties everything together. These aren't separate techniques you rotate through. They're 3 parts of the same flow. You start by not validating her too fast, which creates the challenge. Then you make an observation about who she really is, which builds the connection. And then you let the silence breathe, which creates the tension. When you move through those 3 things naturally, without forcing it, the conversation becomes flirty without you even trying. Because it's not about memorizing lines or having perfect timing. It's about understanding the structure underneath every flirty interaction, challenge, connection, tension, push, pull, pause. Once you recognize that rhythm, once you feel how it works, you can apply it to any conversation with any woman in any situation. I tested this myself for 2 months straight. Every time I talked to a woman, I made sure to hit all 3. I didn't validate her right away. I made at least one solid observation about who she was, and I let at least 1 or 2 pauses sit longer than felt comfortable. The difference was night and day. Conversations that used to fizzle out after 5 minutes were turning into 20 or 30-minute interactions where she was the one trying to keep them going. Numbers I got actually turned into replies. Dates actually led somewhere. And the wildest part was that it didn't feel like work. It felt natural. Because I wasn't performing or trying to say the perfect thing. I was just creating space for attraction to happen, instead of accidentally killing it like I used to. You don't need to be the funniest guy in the room. You don't need to have the best stories or the most impressive life. You just need to understand how attraction actually builds in a conversation. It's not through agreement. It's not through constant talking, it's through challenge, connection, and tension. That's it. That's the formula. So the next time you're talking to a woman and the conversation starts to feel flat, don't panic. Don't rush to fill the silence. Don't try to impress her with more words. Just remember to stop validating her so fast. Make an observation about who she really is and let the silence breathe. When you do that, you'll turn ordinary conversations into flirty ones without even thinking about it. Because you don't create attraction by playing it safe. You create it by allowing a little uncertainty, a little friction, and a little space for her to wonder about you, instead of having you all figured out in the first 5 minutes. YouTube thinks you'll really enjoy this next video right here. So click on it, and I'll see you there.